Hi, I'm Bruce with SFA, and you've tuned in to the Space Power Internet Radio Show, and I'm glad you did. I think you will be too. I've got a couple of great guests for you today. A young lady who is a recipient of the Future Space Professional Scholarship. Um, Actually, SFA gives 3 of those out every year. And you'll have a chance to meet her and hear about her passions around space and how she plans to use the scholarship award. I think you'll enjoy that. And I also have with me the SFA Awards Committee Chairman. SFA does awards right. And I tell you, the words three-dimensional and crystal came up in our discussion. So with the Space Power Conference just around the corner, we're all getting excited about awards, and it's a great time. They're handed out at this wonderful gala, and it is a great time. So you'll have a chance to hear from him. Maybe he'll give us an inside scoop on what's happening. We'll see how he plays his cards close to his chest or not. But all that's coming your way right after this. I have 2 wonderful guests, and I want to introduce you to them, and then we'll talk a little bit with them as well. Heren works with the Systems Planning and Analysis company, and Madeleine Yee, who is a senior at Purdue University and aerospace engineer. We're talking about the SFA scholarship, in particular the Future Space Professional Scholarship. Madeleine is a winner, and Henry has all the details. So I want to start with Henry. So Henry, you are involved in this scholarship program. I know that Madeleine is one of the winners. There are some others, but before we get to that, tell me a little bit about you and your involvement with the Space Force Association.
Well, as you know, the Space Force Association has been around just for a few years now. Bill Wolf really got everything going. And initially, I was involved with one of the journals that the Space Force Association tried to put out. And then I transitioned over about a year and a half ago to leading the push for the Future Space Professional Scholarship. So the idea is that we'll award 3 scholarships each year for $2,500 each, looking at primarily right now at juniors and seniors focused on STEM degree paths. And so we went through that process through the spring, collecting all the applications, had compiled a group of professionals working across the space community, from military operations to policy to science to academic pursuits. And we gave them those applications, and they scored through those. And Madeleine was one of the 3 folks that was selected as a winner this year for the 2025 Future Space Professional Scholarship.
Yeah, it's exciting. If I remember, this is a fairly new scholarship. This hasn't been around a long time.
Space Force Association did try running it a couple years ago, and then just with all the growth that Space Force Association has been experienced, there was a little continuity blip, but we're back on track now, and we're actually looking to expand it. This scholarship, as I mentioned, is focused on juniors and seniors, with it working on the undergrads. But we had several graduate students that reached out to us, were interested to know if a scholarship would be available to them, and actually some of the junior ROTC students that are out there working within Space Force Association channels. So that's something that we're looking at for next year. Are there ways that we can expand the scholarship, maybe offer additional scholarships, or at the very least kind of spread the love and maybe have some different levels of scholarship to really help a wider range of students?
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. Because gosh, that way you get folks that are in high school as well as through college and even postgraduate. Now I know I'm not eligible personally anymore for these, but if I were eligible, how would I go about, and what would be, what are the qualifications for applying for the scholarship?
So there's an application that we put out on the SFA website, and it gets advertised out on social media. This year we started at the beginning of February with a deadline on the applications at the 1st of May. So there's a series of questions that the students are asked to answer. Then they're also asked to get a letter of endorsement from a faculty member, just to kind of show where they're moving forward. We do check to make sure that they're focused on a STEM degree and really in that undergraduate zone. But like I said, this year we did have folks from outside that zone that we talked to, and we said, hey, if we don't get enough applicants, we could consider your application. Fortunately for us, we actually received plenty of applicants that were in the zone there, and that we're able to select the 3 winners.
Yeah, so STEM. What are the particular degrees that the scholarship looks for?
So really any science, technology, engineering, mathematics, anything in those fields. Um, so we really kind of leave it up to them. And then that's where the questions within the application really kind of draw is how do you plan to take that degree and use it within a space related profession as you move, beyond your undergraduate work. And so, that's part of what we're assessing is how are they looking to use their STEM degree to go further pursuits of space, whether in the government or commercially.
Exciting stuff. I always got to ask personal question. So how did how did the Space Force Association kind of catch your attention? What's your story there?
Well, I am retired from the U.S. Space Force. I spent most of my career in the United States Air Force, but I transitioned to the Space Force the last couple of years, and so I retired just over 30 years of service. Again, primarily the Air Force, but at the end was the Space Force. So, continuing to reach out and support the folks that are coming up, the next generation, is something that I'm definitely interested in, and so this was something that I felt that I could contribute with.
Super exciting. That's super exciting. Um, yeah, great stuff. Hey, so we'll move over to Madeline in just a second, but I know that we had two other winners. I thought we'd give them a shout out. You want to take a minute and mention them?
Yeah, Justin Williams. So he's studying at the Florida Institute of Technology. So he was selected for one of those fellowships. And then Aaron Nagarkati is at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University down there in Florida. So he was the third winner for our three scholarships this year, along with Madeline.
Congratulations to them. I think I forgot to ask, how much are these scholarships for?
$2,500 each.
It's nice. That you can get a lot of burritos for $2,500.
Well, I'll let Madeline talk about that.
Hey, Madeleine, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Congratulations. This is Madeleine Yee. She's a senior at Purdue, studying aerospace engineering. Congratulations on winning the Future Space Professional Scholarship.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let me get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, why aerospace engineering? How did you head down that path?
Absolutely. And I always attribute my story of I was born on July 20th, man on the moon day, 35 years before I was born. So maybe a little bit of fate, who knows? But I have always loved aerospace engineering since I was a child. I have engineer parents, so they made sure that science and math was definitely a part of my childhood, whether it was like the little TV shows or making sure that I saw the science in my everyday life. And so I really got into aerospace engineering starting high school when I was more looking towards what type of fields I wanted to look into and study in college. And I was really drawn to aerospace engineering because of all the rockets and the satellites and being able to go to the stars and explore the universe. Those are some of the greatest greatest hits of society in terms of the aerospace engineering world. And so I wanted to be really involved with that and help in any way I can. So I decided aerospace engineering. I decided to go to Purdue, one of the top schools in aerospace engineering in the nation. And so as I'm working towards my degree, I've always been looking towards opportunities to expand my outreach, whether it's through knowledge and learning different topics or as well as scholarships as well, and being able to fund my degree and eventually go to grad school, which is what I hope to do.
Exciting stuff. So I got to ask you, most difficult class and your best class, your most fun class.
I loved thermodynamics. I know some people were not the
Wow.
biggest fan of
Okay.
that one,
Yeah.
but that one was especially cool. I love working with pressure and temperatures and seeing how those work. So that was definitely my most fun class. Hardest class. Right now, I'm gonna say flight dynamics. That's relating to airplanes and how the control systems uh, run the airplanes and make sure that they stay stable in while they're flying. And so, as someone who identifies so much with rockets and satellites and that stuff, stepping into the airplane world was really cool, but it was definitely really hard. So that was my
Yeah,
first.
that does sound like a difficult class. Thermo. Now, there's one I took, but yeah, that didn't hit my top 10 list. Um, but you know what? As a rocket engineer, potentially in the future, all that stuff matters. Chamber pressure and all that kind of stuff. So
So
you're in you're in good shape for that. Hey, so I got to ask you. So how'd you find out? How'd you hear about this as a scholarship?
Absolutely. And so I'm part of a program here at Purdue called Leadership in Space Careers. It's a mentoring network where mentors from all across industry, government, military, academia, they mentor students at Purdue and give them guidance on where they want to go in their careers, or like how to balance being an aerospace engineer and work-life balance, whatever topics that we as mentees want to talk about. And so as part of this network that is the Leadership in Space Careers, one of the mentors highlighted and sent out the application for the scholarship. And I was like, I don't know, maybe like, yes, I want to go into space eventually, but I don't know if I'm qualified for a scholarship like this. This seems very professional by the Space Force, and like it'd be a dream to work for them, but just I don't know if I'm ready for that. And so I just put my application in. It was very much a shot in the dark. I had a lot of fun writing the essays that were a part of the application. They got me to think outside of the box that I normally do as part of my engineering curriculum. And so asking like, which technology am I most excited for? That was a really cool essay to write, as I got to research what is currently going on in the industry and see what I'm interested in, as well as what I'm excited and looking forward to. And so it was a really fun application, actually. I was quite surprised. And then asking one of my professors for a letter of recommendation, one of the professors that taught me aerodynamics, which is my specialization, actually. And so that was really easy, and just asking him, making sure you ask in advance and give him time to write it, and then just submitting the application, and here we are now.
Here we are. Yeah. So I got to know, what was your favorite technology?
I think I talked a lot about refueling technology as something that's very sustainable, as well as enabling us to explore farther into the universe than what we currently have. And I know SpaceX is trying to do some refueling with their Starship rocket. And so if they can get that successful and we can explore Mars even farther, even better.
Yeah, they might need a little help on that, Madeline.
Absolutely.
You might be just in time for that. Yeah, that is interesting stuff. And I've actually found that there are companies out there who actually will. It's their project, their business to refuel satellites on orbit. So they've developed some sort of proprietary connections, so you can refuel your satellite. Go get a little shot of hydrazine or whatever it is that's used for maneuvering, and that seems pretty important to the whole idea of keeping satellites going. So yeah, that ought to be very, very interesting. So let me ask you this question. So how did you actually find out that you won the award?
I was actually at my internship at the Aerospace Corporation over this past summer, the summer of 2025. I was just working, minding my own business. I was running an experiment, so I had some downtime to just make sure, check my email, things like that. And I saw the notification from Henry that I got an email about the scholarship. And I was like, okay, I'm not expecting much. This was very much a shot in the dark. And like, worst case, I just apply again next year now that I've been through the application cycle, and I found out that I got it. And being at work, I tried to keep a low profile and make sure that like I wasn't drawing too much attention to myself, but internally I was so excited to have received the scholarship, and I know it's going to be a great benefit as I pursue grad school in the future.
Yeah, that is exciting stuff. So Henry, you get the fun job of letting people know, huh?
Well, and it is great to let folks know. I wish we could just move a little faster. I feel terrible for them sitting on pins and needles waiting for that response, but it is nice when you can send that note out and let them know that they won. And really, we let everyone know, even the folks that weren't selected this year. There were some tremendous applications that were put in. There's some really bright up and coming future leaders that are really looking to go and make an impact out in the space professions. And I feel bad for the folks that couldn't get selected. We only award so many scholarships, and then definitely a large group of very deserving young folks, and I wish them all the best.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so Madeline, let me ask you this question. So you've already talked about grad school. So you staying at Purdue, and tell us about your plans there.
Absolutely. So I'm currently enrolled in Purdue's 4+1 program. That's where you get a bachelor's and a master's degree in 5 years. And so that's going to be able to accelerate me going through grad school and be able to take all the courses as part of it. There's current plans of pursuing a PhD as well. I'm right now looking at Purdue, looking to stay, but if there's other opportunities at other universities, I'd never say no. I'd love to look into it. And so after grad school, we'll eventually go into industry, either at commercial or at a federally funded research and development center like aerospace, really where my passions lie in the area that I want to focus in once I fully determine that. As right now, I have a general idea. So.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so you're wrapping up, or shortly will be wrapping up your undergrad degree. Do you have a focus for your graduate work?
Yeah, I currently do. Right now, I focus a lot in thermal fluids. So, a lot of my work is looking at fluid systems for thermal management. How can we use different types of fluids and fluid systems to cool or heat a spacecraft, a rocket, whatever that is involved in? And so, I do a lot more of the analysis side of that. So, creating models through Thermal Desktop, Intus Fluent, some of my favorite softwares, and look at ways that we can cool these before we actually build them experimentally so we can save time, money, things like that.
Interesting. Um, yeah. So, and then PhD would be kind of like, even more focused in that area, you think?
Absolutely. PhD would involve a lot more research in that area, which I am very passionate about. I've been doing undergraduate research for almost 5 years now. I started in high school, so that's kind of wild. But being able to do research in this specific area would allow me to gain a much farther understanding than a undergrad or a graduate degree would give me. And so I'm looking forward to doing a PhD in this area. I want to learn more about this. I love learning, and I don't ever see myself to stop loving learning. And so that's why I want to look towards a PhD, especially at Purdue, which is one of the number one place for propulsion. So, which is a lot relating to thermal fluids. So looking to stay here, but will not ignore any other opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your dream job? If someone said, hey, you could do any job you want to do after you get your PhD, after you got your master's, what would you like?
Absolutely. Right now, I mean, my dream job always switches depending on my mood, but right now it's looking towards being in launch operations. So being the one either in the thermal or the propulsion seat saying, okay, the rocket's good to go. And telling the flight commander, okay, we're good to go. And the Apollo 13-esque of what you can think of in that mission control room, telling Gene Kranz, who are the flight director, that we're ready to launch this rocket. That's what I see myself doing, and enabling that for space exploration, for commercial space, private industry. As long as I'm in that seat and telling, okay, we're ready to reach the stars, then I'm happy.
It's exciting stuff. Well, I certainly wish you the best on that journey. You've got a great start to it. So we've been talking with Madeleine Yee, who's a senior at Purdue in aerospace engineering. She is the winner of the Future Space Professional Scholarship. I should say one of 3 winners. And we've been talking with Heren also, who oversees the scholarship program at the Space Force Association. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back after this.
The Space Force Association is a way you can get involved in the space community, network with military, industry, and academic leaders, and support our Space Force and the guardians who protect us. The SFA provides opportunities to research, inform, and advocate for a strong Space Force. SFA will keep you informed on the latest developments in space and our Space Force. Show your support. Sign up today at ussfa.org. That's ussfa.org.
My guest is Mark Dreiling, and Mark is a retired Air Force captain. He was a space officer in the Air Force, and these days he is the chief of staff at the office of Congressman Don Bacon, who's the second United States Congressman for the 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska, which gets quite a bit of attention every time there's a national election. So I'm sure he's right in the midst of everything. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, it's great. Been looking forward to talking to you. So I got to ask you, though, we will talk about the SFA Awards program because that is what you're in charge of, and there's lots going on there, I know. But I got to ask, so I did a little bit of studying on the internet, found out that you were the campaign manager for Rep. Representative Bacon, all the way back in 2015.
That's
And
correct.
so politics. So from the military to politics, what's the story there?
Well, honestly, it was not the plan originally. So, I had worked in the political theater prior to my time in the military. And when I went into the military, I never planned to ever really go back. But I was home on terminal leave. And I remember there was a rally and that I was not going to. And my parents said, "Oh, come on, Mark, I'll go to this. You have some friends there who'd like to see you." No, not interested. And then they finally mentioned something about there might be food there. And I went, "Oh, free food. Why not?" So I went to this rally, and there were a lot of people speaking, but there was a guy who had just retired from the military named Don Bacon. And he was speaking, and he just retired literally like the day before. And I remember listening to him going, "This guy should run for something." So a week later, there was an election, a week or so later, and the incumbent congressman, who was a friend of mine, uh, he had lost, unfortunately. And the next day, having did lunch with my parents, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, can't believe what happened." And uh, they said to me, "So what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to call Don Bacon." And they said, "Why?" I said, "It's going to run for Congress." And they said, "He told you that?" I said, "Not exactly." They weren't very happy. They're like, "Oh, leave him alone." I still have lunch with him the next day, and we're chit chatting, and he's like, "So how can I help you?" I said, "Have you thought about running for Congress?" And he said, "Have you spoken with my wife?" And went, "No, sir." He said, "She said the same thing yesterday." And I looked at him and I said, "You married a smart person. We need to listen to her." Kind of the rest is history. And he announced in March of 2015, and I was privileged enough to run his campaign. And we actually did the very rare thing of unseating an incumbent, but that doesn't happen with a tremendous amount of hard work every single day. And we had a wonderful team, and really, I would say that it was just a privilege to be a part of a really great team that was successful, and a privilege to work for the congressman in that campaign.
That's interesting stuff. So this was in Nebraska. I got to tell you, I have an affinity for Nebraska. My wife is from Nebraska, so I did actually check the football scores before I came. So 6-3, go Big Red. Got to say that. So right there in Omaha, is that where this
Yep.
rally was?
In Omaha, yeah, it was a rally. I met him by pure chance. And again, the rest is history. It's always funny how in life there's those little instances where you go to an event or you walk through a door. And in my life, that's been the circumstances a lot of times where just there's these little inflection points. That's one of many inflection points, but I would say there's probably about yeah, 6 inflection points in my life that were key. That was one of them. The day that in 2003 that I decided to look at going into the military was another one. I remember, walking through the doors of the Military Naval Science Building at the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and all my friends at the time, were surprised. And really, I would say the biggest part was just stepping through that front set of doors and walking in and saying, "Hey, I'm interested."
Was that ROTC? So you did ROTC at
Yeah.
University of, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a very common story I hear talking to people on the show. ROTC is how a lot of people get their start. Um, yeah, so that's interesting. So here you are 10 years later. I mean, 2015, now we're in 2025. What is it like, Chief of Staff? And so do you have, are you both in Washington, D.C. and also in Nebraska? What's the day in the life of a Chief of Staff look like?
Well, very busy. I mean, I've been in DC for the last decade. I do go back to Nebraska a few weeks every quarter, but uh, every single day is a very different day. You always have different challenges. Sometimes it can be assisting with a casework challenge. Other times, as the chief of staff or a congressman, you wear a lot of hats. So you're kind of the chief budget officer for the office. You're the head of human resources for the office. You are a policy advisor for the office, and every day is different. And the most important thing though about being a chief of staff or a congressman, I believe, is that you need to make sure to, as you're staffing the office, surround yourself with good people. My general policy is hire people who you think are better than you. And some people have a problem with that. I don't. So when I look at all the people that we've hired over the years, I've hired a lot of people who, whether they're my age and I just look at them as better than me right now, or younger. I have a couple younger staffers, for example, who I was telling them, like, when I was your age, I was not as good as you are. You are a much better person at your age than I was when I was that age. And I think that's the important thing with a job like this, is finding the ability, the humility to recognize. And I find that's true almost anywhere. But surround yourself with good people, take care of your people. That's mainly, as I see it, taking care of the congressman, taking care of the team. That's kind of one of my big jobs, and making sure people get to where they're supposed to. So directing a lot of traffic.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So how many people on a team for a congressman?
18.
18.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a lot more than I would have thought. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. Yeah, that's a big office. Keeps you guys busy.
Yeah, it's been fun, but it's a great team. The congressman sets a really good vision, and the congressman is somebody who's very serious about getting business done, which is why he's been recognized by the Center for Effective Lawmaking as being one of the most effective members of Congress. We also have been recognized for having one of the best workplace environments by the Congressional Management Foundation. And all those things are not possible without every member of the team, starting with the congressman and his vision and everything down from there. So for me, it's just a real opportunity and a real privilege to be able to do this.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And I didn't check on this. I'm not sure when the congressman's up for re-election, but
He's retiring.
He's retiring.
He's retiring.
Oh, wow.
It's been a decade and he's retiring.
He said that's enough. Huh. So that begs the question, what's next for you?
Still working that out. I have a number of opportunities. It seems like I said, my life throws me for a lot of loops. By the way, literally everything is up for grabs. So when it comes to my background, so anything we want to discuss is fine.
Okay, good. Gosh, now you got me thinking there. You shouldn't have said that, Mark. I will keep it on the up and up. But I am curious though.
Prefer Coke, not Pepsi. No offense to Pepsi. I'm sorry.
I will ask you about a little bit more about politics. So being 10 years with a U.S. congressman, so every 2 years you've got to go through a re-election campaign. So what is that like?
Oh, it's a constant marathon. It's a marathon that sometimes feels like dozens of small sprints, but it's a marathon. But most things in life are.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, well, let's I could talk about this stuff for a long time, but let's jump over to the Space Force Association. So there's always an interesting story. Everyone's got one as to how they got connected with SFA. So I'm curious what your story is.
Well, so let's go back a little to when I first entered the Air Force. So I remember it like it was yesterday. I arrived out at Vandenberg Air Force Base back in 2006. I commissioned December of 2005. And when I went out to Vandenberg Air Force Base, I remember we had to fill out career assignment sheets. Now, everyone in my class, except for one person, was going to be going to one of the missile bases. We were all going to be missileers. So I assumed that was what was in store for me. And I remember I had some people in my class who had some legitimate reasons why they preferred maybe one missile base over another. Maybe it was something along the lines of, being closer to family, or, where there's better opportunities for maybe their spouse. So I was looking at this and I thought to myself, how can I better increase the chances of other people getting the assignment location that they prefer? And I was really willing to go anywhere. So I simply wrote on my dream sheet, needs of the Air Force. And I thought this was actually a common thing. I remember I got a phone call from a Captain McGee telling me I had to report into the squadron commander's office. I didn't know what I did. So I actually rushed home to Lompoc, got into my service dress, came in to report in, and I was like, well, I don't know what I did, but whatever I did, I'm sorry. I take responsibility, but I don't know what it was. The squadron commander wanted to talk to me about my dream sheet. That was it. So I was pretty upfront with him, and I said, my college roommate at the time was had been deployed overseas multiple times to Iraq, and I came from all military family, so kind of grew up being told, you go where you're needed. And so, a couple weeks later, we have drop night, and I'm heading in. We're all heading into the club, and we're all being handed envelopes. And some other lieutenant shouts, I didn't get an envelope. And this major's like, "Where's Dreiling?" I said, "Right here." He said, "Give me your envelope back. You're not going up on stage. You have to sit in the audience. You have a clearance issue." And I went, "A clearance
Oh,
issue?"
wow.
And in my mind's racing. I'm thinking, is this about that $5 parking ticket that I've been fighting with the University of Nebraska
Right.
about? I'm like, uh, who knows? I kept thinking to myself, what could this be about? Well, I'm sitting in the audience. I'm watching my classmates on stage. And at that time, Lieutenant Colonel Monteith, now General Monteith, was talking about, what they needed and how they have this one assignment for SIBRs, space-based infrared systems, and how this is very coveted. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to one of the 10,000 proud brains in the class. But he started talking about how what they really need is they needed someone with the right attitude, someone who's willing to do whatever is needed to get the mission done. And they said, and we had one person write needs of the Air Force. And that's how I ended up going into space assignments. And to be brutally honest, I wasn't the smartest person in that class. I wasn't the best person. But I think General Monteith probably just saw something in me that I really appreciate. And that was a defining moment of my life. I mean, I looked at it from the standpoint of service before self, and that's how I wrote my dream sheet. So I ended up at Buckley Space Force Base. I uh, worked there on the legacy DSP system, the SIBR system. I worked some other missions on the base. Excuse me, and it was a great experience. Um, the only reason I didn't necessarily continue, I was in the service for about a decade, was somewhere in 2011. It's discovered July of 2011 that I developed a rare inflammatory condition. And I remember getting told, they said, "Yeah, you have a rare inflammatory condition, and it's specifically of the liver," which, you know, I was like, "Well, what caused this?" They said, "You were exposed to something." I said, "Okay." They don't know what, but they know sometime in 2011. So, I never actually took any sick days, but fast forward 3 years later, and in 2014, was medically retired at the time because of this rare condition, which they said within 10 years, after 10 years, your condition will deteriorate and you'll need to have a liver transplant. So that's kind of what changed the direction of my life. But, I looked at that simply as an opportunity to figure out what I could overcome and to learn something about myself. And that was really, for me, how I approached dealing with a condition like that. And sure enough, 10 years later, July of 2021, labs are still stable. August of 2021, one of the labs skyrocketed. And so a month after the 10-year anniversary of my diagnosis. And the next year, June 6th, International Transplant Day, also D-Day, I had an 8-hour transplant procedure. They put a new liver in me. And 4 days after the procedure, I walked 2 miles in one day in the hospital. 8 days later, I was back working again. So that's kind of part of my journey. Throughout that journey, I've gotten to see the best of humanity. I've gotten to see the best in people. And, and I ended up having this procedure. Well, you asked how I came into working with the SFA. While I was in the hospital, I actually started writing an idea for legislation for the recognition of what we now call legacy guardians. And I remember Congressman Bacon said, "I think it's a good idea, but let's go find out what folks think about it." So it's like, talk to folks at the SFA. So while I was literally still in recovery, I have a Zoom meeting. I was about probably 140 pounds at the time. I had a Zoom meeting with Bill Wolf, and I had met him a few times previously, but that was how I actually became real active. He said right away, "We love this idea," and then I got active in many other ways in the SFA, and it's been uh, great to be a part of that journey with the SFA, and it's great to have them on my journey as I go through this new unexpected second chapter of my life. That's a long story as to how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting though, Mark. I mean, everybody has an interesting story, but that's quite interesting. So, yeah, gosh. So all wrapped up in kind of medical challenges for you, and then Representative Bacon. So he pointed you directly to Bill Wolf. That must have been SFA
well,
must have been just starting right about that
what he
time.
did was he said, yeah, go get opinions. This is what we, in the legislative process, you always want to find out what folks think of an idea to see, is this a good idea or not? So he said, I remember he was sitting there. He's like, okay, well, yeah, find out what like the association that would be interested in this. I said Space Force Association. So yeah, find out what they think. So, he pointed me in the direction. So, so yeah, then I requested a meeting with Bill.
So this is 2022.
This is how long, yeah, we started formulating this idea back in 2022.
So that must have been right about the time SFA was just getting off the ground.
Well, SFA, I think actually predates the Space Force by a couple months. I think it was founded beforehand.
Right. That's right. You're right about that. Yep.
And I had been to a few SFA events before my surgery, but it was more of just like an event here or there. And I had talked to some folks about some ideas. But it was literally after the surgery where I was like, all right, let's figure out how to make this work.
Yeah. And
yeah.
you know why I always think SFA was like early 2020s is because I count backwards on the conferences, and we're coming up with the third one. But I forget that it actually started in 2019, right around the time that Space Force was became an official branch of the military too. Wow, so interesting stuff. Yeah, and that legislation passed. Was it this year or last year?
Last year.
Last year. Yeah, I hear lots of people. You know, I've spoken with a number of retired Air Force, legacy Space Force people, and they all a lot of times mention that legislation. Makes them feel proud. So
it was one of those pieces of legislation that it does impact a number of people. And I remember one of the comments that I saw on Facebook that probably impacted me the most. It was from an NCO who I used to work with, who was just a really great guy. And I remember he sat there and he said, he even posted like a disclaimer that he doesn't really necessarily, I think, care for a lot of what Congress does. He said, but for this one, he said, I had felt disassociated from the career I spent my entire life in until this bill came along. And he said, and that kind of like changed it. And I went, all right, you never want to hear someone say they feel disassociated. That's the first thing. And if we have an opportunity to change it. So I think that legislation meant a lot to people. And I was proud to have had a small hand in that. Again, that was also a team effort. A lot of people were involved in making that happen. And so, I was simply just a part of that effort. And it was a privilege to be able to be a part of something that means so much to so many people who, quite frankly, are not just a part of my life and a significant part of my life, but who I feel I owe so much. I mean, people have asked me before, how did you get through everything you got through from a medical standpoint? And I'm very open and upfront. The attitude and discipline instilled in me by the military space community is why I'm still here today. I don't know if the Mark Dreiling that woke up on the 7th of June, I don't know if I had not been in the military and not been a part of this community, I don't know if that guy would have been, for example, hiking 2 miles in one day in the hospital 4 days after a major surgery. I don't think that person would. But when I look back at all the people I've served with a lot of extraordinary men and women, and I hold them all in such high regard. Someone once accused me. They said, "You just think everyone in the military is great." I said, "Guilty as charged," because all the people I served with were great. everyone has their quirks. I certainly have mine. Um, it's like quiz me on Star Trek trivia, and it shows how much of a nerd I am. But the reality is that uh, the military is like a big family, and it's a very special one too.
Yeah, it is indeed. Um, yeah, and I think that legislation really had an impact for a lot of people. Speaking of impact, let's switch gears. I want to talk about awards at the Space Force Association. You are the chairman of the awards program. Am I right about that?
That's correct, and we have a great committee of people.
Yeah. So, and I remember last year seeing some of those awards at the Space Power Conference. I don't know all that goes into it, but I would love to hear a little bit about kind of the overall SFA awards program and and kind of what your thoughts are on it.
Well, so there was a lot of coordination over the last year that went on with feedback from the Space Force to kind of iron out things in the program. So it's the Guardian of the Year awards program consists of categories for space operations, cyber operations, intel operations, and also force modernization. Then further divided by officers, enlisted, and civilian categories. And it's a pretty competitive process. From the units all the way up to the command level, there is a lot of adjudication that goes on. So the nomination process starts early in the summer. July is when the solicitations for nominees go out, and that entire process is pretty thorough. And then SFA at the very end does the final round of nominations because you have all the finalists at the command level. So it's a pretty thorough process, and they'll be highlighting those individuals at the gala. There's also additional awards that are open for public nomination for things like literature, arts, and the media, for expanding the presence in the human space domain, for innovation, for education, for space engineering and technology. Those awards actually go back all the way to 2023. Those were some of the first awards conceded of. And so there's a pretty thorough adjudication process. I would say it's a team effort. In addition to that, we've established some things for the program that, like the recipients, you'll see they have a nice medal that now has a presentation case and a lapel pin. We're unveiling new trophies for this year that are crystal. They're
Really?
tall. They're custom. They're a custom design, a custom three-dimensional delta design, truly unique. And so there are some exciting things that people I think will enjoy seeing. And this year the schedule's going very, very well, and so the committees are even working on the draft scripts, and so it'll be pretty exciting to see I think everything happened in December, and again it's a lot of work. It's a team effort. That's the important thing. And and I think that in the future, as we move forward, you'll see adjustments here and there. But I think that after about going into the third year, I think that the program is starting to mature quite a bit.
Yeah. So, I was trying to remember some of those words. They're just, it's all a blur. The gala. It's just, by the way, for people who have not been to the Space Power Conference and in particular the gala is just a wonderful time. Everybody's in their service dress, having a good time, clapping for award recipients. It is wonderful. But tell me about, so if I were a guardian and I was starting at the beginning of the year, I had until December, and I really wanted to go after an award, which one would I be going after?
Well, it all depends. I mean, it all depends. So how it's set up is that guardians can literally compete for all categories when it comes to the four main categories. So you could conceivably have, for example, someone who is maybe an acquirer, is their regular job, but they've been doing a lot of work in space ops, competing for space ops. Or you could have somebody who is space ops, but they've been doing a lot of work in force modernization. So the one thing is that all four categories are open for guardians to compete in. a lot of times any awards like this, because I remember when I was in the military, a lot of times, this starts at the unit level, and the units will send up packages based on who they think are most competitive. And so a lot of that does start at the unit level. And I've always told people, if you want to be competitive, first of all, if you want to ever be competitive, just make sure you document what you're actually doing. And in addition, sometimes look at even, I'd say, the whole person. So I remember when I was a CGO, I kept a spreadsheet, not just regarding my stuff, but I used to keep a spreadsheet regarding everyone who I worked with to help them with packages. So it was very, very easy thing. But that's the one advice I would always give to anyone is that, first of all, take care of your people. Second of all, if you have a young guardian or you had a young airman who did something really extraordinary, make sure to document it. Even if they just did something that was a one-off. Awards programs, not just SFA, awards programs, they like to look at all those things. And so I used to regularly document the folks I was in charge of in order to see what I could do to help them out.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Now, awards for industry also, or are we really just focused on the Guardians?
No, there's awards for pretty much those other 5 categories. There are folks in the civilian world who also have received nominations and will be getting awards.
So I gotta ask, is it possible to sweep the awards if you're just an outstanding Guardian? You can in each category. Is it one?
I don't think we're going to see anything like James Cameron. So for those who are younger or watching, just go back to the year that Titanic took 11 Oscars, I believe.
It seemed like it took every single one out there.
11 Oscars, yet not a single Oscar for acting,
which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So just for the historical record, since I brought it up, Jack Nicholson for As Good as It Gets, Helen Hunt for As Good as It Gets for Best Actor and Best Actress, Kim Basinger for LA Confidential, and was it Robin Williams, I think, for Good Will Hunting? I think those were the best supporting. Verify it, but I believe that was the case. The last time I ever checked that was the night that I watched those Oscars on television. So I'm going back several decades here.
Yeah.
But
everything else was Titanic.
Everything else was Titanic. And someone asked me, they're like, what do you think about them getting no acting awards? I said, well, the real actor was the ship. So I don't know how you give it award. No offense. No. All right. If Leonardo DiCaprio or Kate Winslet's watching, I apologize. That was just a joke. You guys did great.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Hey, so I got to ask you, just kind of looking forward into next year. I mean, you mentioned that you've felt like we're in the 3rd year of handing out awards at the gala here. You feel like it's starting to come together in the way that you like it. Anything on the horizon that you're looking to tweak from an awards perspective? Or anything, let me ask this, anything outside of the Space Power Conference? I mean, really, Space Power Conference, to me, you've got the covered from an award perspective, but are there things that you're considering like outside the Space Power Conference throughout the year?
Well, there's always a lot of things I get drafted into that I'm working on. So I will tell you that when it comes to things with the SFA, I get recruited a lot when it comes to designing anything that requires a little bit of artwork, which is fun. When I was in the military, I used to, as a hobby, design coins. So
didn't you do the Christmas ornaments?
No, that was not me.
I thought that was you for some reason.
That was no. The medals for the Space Power Excellence Awards, that was one of my pieces of work.
Yeah. Yep.
And one I'm particularly happy about. There is a manufacturer I worked with who I've known for 15 years, and she did a great job. But no, I'm just always privileged to volunteer. It's absolutely great to be a volunteer within the SFA, and whenever they ask me to do something, I'm happy to help.
Well, that's awesome stuff. So Crystal 3-dimensional awards this year, huh? Gonna have to imagine what that's like.
Oh, they are delta shaped. They are fully delta shaped. So there's that little at the bottom, that little part where it comes up and fully delta shape and very striking. And each one is about 8 inches tall.
That's exciting stuff. It'll be amazing, I'm sure. We have been talking with Mark Dreiling, who is the Space Force Association chairman of the awards program and also chief of staff at the office of Congressman Don Bacon. Mark, thank you for taking time with us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great big thank you to my guests today, Madeleine Yee, Henry Heren, and Mark Dreiling. Thank you for taking time to talk with me. It was a great show. I really enjoyed talking with them. And thank you for tuning in. By the way, if you'd like to catch this episode on replay or catch past episodes, it's easy to do. Just go to SFA's website at ussfa.org, and you can find them all there. Next show is going to be the preview for the Spacepower Conference, and it's going to be a great one. I have 2 amazing guests. You won't want to miss these guests, and we'll preview all the exciting stuff going on at the Spacepower Conference. I mean, Florida in December, talking about space things. Does it get any better than that? Be sure and tune in. Till then, I'm Bruce with SFA.